Hey guys, welcome to Whiskey and Literature. I'm your host, Captain Mike, and I'm going to read for you today the longest sentence in literature from Absalom Absalom by William Faulkner. I'm currently reading this book for my 52 books in 52 weeks challenge, and you can find the links in the description below for all the book reviews that I've done so far this year, including this one when I get it done. The sentence that I'm going to read in 1983 was recognized by the Guinness Book of World Records as the longest sentence in literature. 1,288 words long, with parentheses, commas, semicolons, dashes, and only one period at the end of the sentence. There is a current record holder which just blew this one out of the water. It has almost 14,000 words and covers 33 pages, but I'm not going to read that sentence. I'm only reading this one because I'm reading Absalom Absalom, and for some backstory, just a little bit on this sentence, which doesn't really matter because you're not going to understand this sentence. I don't even really understand it, even though I'm reading the book. One of the characters, Quentin, he's at college and he's recounting to one of his friends some family backstory. And this causes his thoughts to wander, and so we are treated to his inner dialogue for 2.5 pages. And when I think of the words inner dialogue, I immediately think of Virginia Woolf and James Joyce, and apparently they were both inspired by William Faulkner. In deference towards sensitivity, I am going to bleep one word in this sentence. All right, buckle up, here we go. And of course the glasses are going on for the reading. Just exactly like Father had known as much about it the night before I went out there as he did the day after I came back, thinking mad, impotent old man who realized at last that there must be some limit even to the capabilities of a demon for doing harm, who must have seen his situation as that of the showgirl, the pony, who realizes that the principal tune she prances to comes not from horn and fiddle and drum, but from clock and calendar, must have seen himself as the old worn-out cannon, which realizes that it can deliver just one more fierce shot and crumble to dust in its own furious blast and recoil, who looked about upon the scene which was still within his scope and compass and saw a sun gone vanished, more insuperable to him now than if the sun were dead, since now, if the sun still lived, his name would be different, and those to call him by its strangers, and whatever dragon's outcropping of Sutpen blood the sun might sow on the body of whatever strange woman would therefore carry on the tradition, accomplish the hereditary evil and harm under another name, and upon and among people who will never have heard the right one. Daughter doomed to spinsterhood, who have chosen spinsterhood already before there was anyone named Charles Bond, since the aunt who came to succor her in bereavement and sorrow found neither, but instead that calm, absolutely impenetrable face between a homespun dress and sunbonnet, seen before a closed door, and again in a cloudy swirl of chickens while Jones was building the coffin, and which she wore during the next year, while the aunt lived there and the three women wove their own garments and raised their own food and cut the wood they cooked with, excusing what help they had from Jones, who lived with his granddaughter in the abandoned fishing camp with its collapsing roof and rotting porch, against which the rusty scythe, which Sutpen was to lend him, make him borrow to cut away the weeds from the door, and at last forced him to use, though not to cut weeds, at least not vegetable weeds, would lean for 2 years. And war still, after the aunt's indignation had swept her back to town to live on stolen garden truck and out of anonymous baskets left on her front steps at night, the three of them. The two daughters, Negro and white, and the aunt 12 miles away, watching from her distance as the two daughters watched from theirs the old demon. The ancient varicose and despairing Faustus, fleeing his final Maine now with the creditor's hand already on his shoulder, running his little country store now for his bread and meat, haggling tediously over nickels and dimes with rapacious and poverty-stricken whites and Negroes, who at one time could have galloped for 10 miles in any direction without crossing his own boundary, using out of his meager stock the cheap ribbons and beads and the stale, violently covered candy with which even an old man can seduce a 15-year-old country girl to ruin the granddaughter of his partner, this Jones, this gangling, malaria-ridden white man who he had given permission 14 years ago to squat in the abandoned fishing camp with a year-old grandchild. Jones, partner, porter, clerk, who at the demon's command removed with his own hand, and maybe delivered too, from the showcase. The candy beads and ribbons measured the very cloth from which Judith, who had not been bereaved and did not mourn, helped the granddaughter to fashion a dress to walk past the lounging men in, the side-looking and the tongues, until her increasing belly taught her embarrassment, or perhaps fear. Jones, who had before 61 had not even been allowed to approach the front of the house, and who during the next 4 years got no nearer than the kitchen door, and that only when he brought the game and fish and vegetables on which the seducer-to-be's wife and daughter, and Clytie too, the one remaining servant negro, the one who would forbid him to pass the kitchen door with what he brought, depended on to keep life in them, but who now entered the house itself on the quite frequent now afternoons when the demon would suddenly curse the store empty of customers and lock the door and repair to the rear, and in the same tone in which he used to address his orderly or even his house servants when he had them, and in which he doubtless ordered Jones to fetch from the showcase and the ribbons and beads and candy, direct Jones to fetch the jug, the two of them, and Jones even sitting now, and who in the old days, the old dead Sunday afternoons of monotonous peace which they had spent beneath the scuppernong arbor in the backyard, the demon lying in the hammock while Jones squatted against a post, rising from time to time to pour for the demon from the demijohn and the bucket of spring water, which he had fetched from the spring more than a mile away, and then squatting again, chortling and chuckling and saying, "Sho, Master Tom," each time the demon paused, the two of them drinking turn and turn about from the jug, and the demon not lying down now, nor even sitting, but reaching after the third or second drink, that old man's state of impotent and furious undefeat, in which he would rise, swaying and plunging and shouting for his horse and pistols to ride single-handed into Washington and shoot Lincoln a year or so too late, and Sherman both shouting, "Kill them, shoot them down like the dogs they are," and Jones, "Show, Colonel, show now," and catching him as he fell and commandeering the first passing wagon to take him to the house and carry him up the front steps and through the paintless, formal door beneath its fanlight, imported pane by pane from Europe, which Judith held open for him to enter with no change, no alteration in that calm, frozen face which she had worn for 4 years now, and on up the stairs and into the bedroom and put him to bed like a baby, and then lie down himself on the floor beside the bed, though not to sleep, since before dawn the man on the bed would stir and groan, and Jones would say, "Here I am, Colonel. It's all right. They ain't whooped us yet, are they?" This Jones, who after the demon rode away with the regiment when the granddaughter was only 8 years old, would tell people that he was looking after Major's place and even before they had time to ask him why he was not with the troops, and perhaps in time came to believe the lie himself, who was among the first to greet the demon when he returned, to meet him at the gate and say, "Well, Colonel, they killed us, but they ain't whooped us yet, are they?" Who even worked, labored, sweat at the demon's behest during that first furious period, while the demon believed he could restore by sheer indomitable willing the Sutpens 100 which he remembered and had lost, labored with no hope of pay or reward, who must have seen long before the demon did or would admit it, that the task was hopeless. Blind Jones, who apparently saw still in that furious, lecherous wreck the old fine figure of the man who once galloped on the black thoroughbred about the domain, two boundaries of which the eye could not see from any point. I have to say, if you made it through that, you're a better person than I am. The first 2 or 3 times that I read that, I did not know what the heck was going on. I'm a little more than halfway through the book right now, so I understood actually most of what I read, but it's just the chaotic thoughts. And if you think about in those times when you're kind of alone and reminiscing or thinking, could you write that down in a sentence? It would something sound like that in that chaotic run-on sentence type structure. Okay guys, after all that, if you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up, like it, it's free. If you want to see more of my content, I do book and whiskey reviews, subscribe. I hope you are reading something good and drinking something great. Turn the pages, my friends, and stay thirsty. Captain Mike.